Stop what you're doing and listen up. Saturn begins its retrograde period on July 14th, and it is going to re-enter Pisces on September 1st. This is going to be a very powerful and transformative transit period. We're basically going to be revisiting everything we've already endured throughout the entire duration of Saturn being in Pisces, so get ready. Now, before we get into it, my name is Sydney. I'm a professional astrologer. I've been studying astrology for over 15 years. I love it so much. I do have my website in the description for those of you who would like to book a reading with me. I also have an email list going, so don't forget to sign up for exclusive promotions, discounts, and astrological insights. And of course, like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. I greatly appreciate all of the support. All right, let's get into it. So Saturn does begin its retrograde period on July 14th, and it is going to be in Aries. So Saturn is officially in Aries right now. However, on September 1st, as I said earlier, it is going to retrograde back into Pisces. The reason why this is so significant is because Aries represents new beginnings. Aries is the sign that kicks off the zodiac wheel, right? So Aries is new beginnings, it's advancement, it's progress, it's spring, it's new life coming up, right? Pisces is the opposite. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac wheel. Pisces represents endings. It's basically closing the chapter of, whatever era of your life you've been experiencing. So when Saturn in Aries begins its retrograde period and it starts to inch its way back into Pisces, it's really going to feel like you're kind of caught between the past and the future. There is this innate sense of nostalgia that can take over. There's also a lot of reassessment when it comes to certain decisions that you've been thinking about making. Don't be surprised if when the Saturn retrograde period hits, you start to have some doubts or you start to have some old insecurities, come to the surface. And this is really going to, of course, depend on where Saturn is transiting for you in your birth chart, in your housing system. Like for some of you, if it's moving through the 7th and it begins its retrograde period, it can note old relationships coming back, relationship baggage that you thought you had squared away coming up to the surface. So it is going to depend on the house that it's in. But for the most part, we're all going to be feeling this need to revisit the past and reassess some decisions we've made. And also while, taking into account decisions we've made, thinking more deeply about decisions we have yet to make, but are planning to make. So this is a really prominent time for just getting more clear about what you want, especially taking into account your learned experiences and everything that you've already been through. Now, with reassessing the past, it's really important to note that there's kind of this relapse period here. And I really don't use that word lightly. And this is really going to hit when Saturn officially re-enters Pisces on September 1st. So what I mean by relapse period is you might revisit old habits. You might literally revisit old vices. Your coping mechanisms can come into play here. So if you've been living your life the past few months where you are making really significant advancements and progress in areas where maybe you used to have some weaknesses or you weren't living life the way you wanted to, if you're finally making progress right now, keep in mind, when Saturn does retrograde back into Pisces, you might feel some temptation to, revert or to go back or to revisit certain, like I said, coping mechanisms or habits, lifestyle habits. I'm not saying this means that you're innately going to succumb to those temptations, but you might have to work a little bit harder to truly resist them and stay focused towards your goals. Stay focused towards the future, stay motivated, stay determined. Do not let that elusive, hypnotic, and, mysterious nature of Pisces pull you back to something that is not good for you. Because that's what can happen. Pisces is very much about smoke and mirrors. It's a magical sign. It's a tricky sign. It's a slippery sign. So you can find yourself in a situation where, you're being tempted and you're like, oh my gosh, do I want to go back to that place? Do I want to go back to that job? Do I want to go back to that person? Do I want to go back to that location even for some of you? Do I want to go back to that old way of life? I'm going to go out on a limb and say odds are no. For some of you, depending on your life circumstances, perhaps, maybe. But for a lot of us, I think, we're trying to keep going in life and make significant progress. And it's really important to have faith because you need to recognize that Aries Saturn will bring new beginnings. So you want to be really mindful about any previous behaviors or old ways of life that are calling you back. Again, you need to stay focused on the future. Now, that said, in revisiting the past and feeling kind of nostalgic, think of this Saturn re-entering Pisces as one last goodbye or one final victory lap. So for some people, it might just more be about reflecting on the past and feeling really proud about where you are right now. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to succumb to old habits or, bad behavior, but it does mean that you're going to be given an opportunity to really relish the life that you have started to curate for yourself since, maybe on the tail end of Saturn in Pisces, or since Saturn moved into Aries. Maybe you've made so much progress, even in that brief amount of time, that you really start to reflect on how far you've come, especially from when Saturn first entered Pisces to where you are right now. I think Saturn and Pisces in general for everyone was very challenging. So Saturn and Aries, to me at least, is like a breath of fresh air. So I think for some people, this time really gives you a lot of opportunity to just reflect on how far you've come and to feel really proud and to feel firm and confident and reassured in your decisions moving forward. So you can kind of think of this time period as one final goodbye, closing the chapter. And for some people, they might need some closure. They might need to kind of revisit the past in an effort to seek out one last piece of insight or enlightenment or reassurance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes you have to go back to where you were and do a quick look around and be like, oh my God, ew, now I remember why I left this place. Sometimes we need to be reminded in order to really appreciate all the progress we've made. So those are some really big experiences and feelings, more importantly. A lot of feelings are going to resurface that can kind of call you back to at least maybe not materially revisiting the past, but psychologically revisiting the past and emotionally revisiting the past. And it's super important that you be gentle with yourself during this retrograde period. You want to have compassion. You don't want to hold yourself to a mistake in a way that is super punishing or super unfair to yourself, because some of us we might slip up. We might indulge in temptation. It might be that we still have unfinished business with certain things in our life that maybe consciously we know is not good for us, but everyone has their own lessons to learn. Everyone's on their own journey. And feeling ashamed or existing in a state of guilt is not going to help you, move past some of those unfavorable experiences or lessons. So you want to be compassionate with yourself, and just know too, if there is a little slip or if there's a little error, or if you, indulge in a behavior that is not necessarily reflective of who you are or who you want to be, you got to give yourself grace. And I'm not saying you can blame Saturn retrograde, but retrogrades are kind of notorious for giving you an opportunity to reassess or revisit. So just know it's kind of par for the course. There is also this association that a retrograde transit, nothing sticks. So you can kind of use that to your advantage and to your, psychological easing and peace of mind to know that if you do engage in a certain behavior that you look back on and you're like, I'm not really proud that I did that, or you have regret, it's probably not going to last. It's just one quick little trip to the past and then you're on to the next. So moving forward, it's okay. Have some grace. It might just be that progress is very slow, or there's just a lot of back and forth in general and indecision. So don't be shocked if on a political scale, things get kind of wonky and weird. I mean, they already are. But I'm more so talking about society, at least in America. Like I said, that's all I can really speak for. Entering this state of just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of indecision, a lot of just not knowing what the future holds. Now, Saturn does station direct on November 28th. It will still be in Pisces. It's going to have re-entered Pisces on September 1st. So November 28th, when Saturn stations direct, it's still going to be in Pisces. So not everything's going to get cleared up right away. But I will say around late November to December, we should start gaining a little more clarity, at least on like a political, government related scope. So things can start to make a little more sense. We might start seeing some definitive answers or solutions. And then on February 13th, 2026, Saturn will re-enter Aries for good. Like this is going to really begin the transit. So I would say between November 28th, 2025 to February 13th of 2026, we might start to see a little more momentum. Like things might be coming a little more obvious and palpable, especially like when it comes to your own personal life. Depending on where this transit's happening for you, you might receive more clarity. You might feel like you're finally out of the fog, like, oh, I made it. You know what I mean? Like you revisited the past, you reassessed whatever needed to be reassessed. You thought more deeply about decisions you needed to make or are going to make. And also maybe you went back on certain commitments you made. Maybe you realized that what you thought you wanted isn't really what you wanted. Like there's a lot of the themes of decision making come into play because Aries has a lot to do with motivation, ambition, the decisions we make, decision-making skills. Not to mention when Saturn is retrograde in the sign of Pisces, there's a deep need here for faith. So cultivating a sense of faith in the midst of the unknown is very important, and that includes on kind of a global scale. But anyway, when Saturn re-enters Aries on February 13th, we should be seeing a lot more progress. Things will start to pick up again. There won't be as much indecision or confusion or uncertainty. And I will say anything that you kind of engaged with during this Saturn retrograde, especially when it did re-enter Pisces, you can start to experience like a wave of relief, clarity. There's just this deeper sense of knowing and also this ability to truly move on from the past. Like anything that you were previously attached to that wasn't the best, you can finally let it go and you can finally embrace the future. Okay, so that's the whole gist. I'm sorry that this was so wordy and rambly and all over the place. Uranus went into Gemini recently and my brain is like super scrambled. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that way, but it was a very rough entrance. Let me know in the comments where Saturn's going to be transiting for you in your housing system, and I will do my very best to respond and give some insight. And do not forget, I do have my website in the description for those of you who would like to book a reading with me. I offer transit readings, so if you really want to know what to expect from this retrograde period, you can definitely go ahead and book a transit reading with me, and I will give you all the deets. And do not forget to sign up for my email list for some of those exclusive goodies. And last but certainly not least, do not forget to like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate all of the support so much.